Okay, we are back with the Grievance Gordy Show. That's right. I'm going to be calling this the Uncivil War. Let me sit down for a second. You guys see? Got my whiteboard going up there. We're going to talk a little bit about Linoleum Blownapart, but I also talk about the fact that I'm not ready for... Oopsie, here it is. All right. Okay, so the title of this episode is Uncivil War. And don't forget, you can listen at 1.5 while you drive, so you don't have to actually watch me struggle here. And then we'll be talking about Linoleum Blownapart. And what Linoleum Blownapart is, you guys can see this. We have Lionel from the 1980s, the 1990s, and we have Walter from the 1950s to the 1970s. Walter's obviously born in 1915. By the time he's 15 years old, right, we get to watch Napoleon, Abel Gann's 5-hour silent classic, which is a triptych. And what's holding them together? What's the glue? The midnight movies, right here. Okay, so that brings them together, as well as the studio. Sorry, just ran up here. Guys, I get up 3 hours before, I'm here 3 hours before the library opens. So, all right, so what's going on? I know it's a little distracting. Gucci. What's going on in society is what's known as an uncivil war. Okay, it's not a civil war. They're already wargaming January 6th. And if you look at January 6th, it's a upside down 19, which is the Metonic cycle. Already on this show, I'm not going to deny that I'm black pilled. So I'm here in Hollywood. I'm working on Linoleum Blownapart, which was the name of my band when I moved back to... So I'm trying to get settled. When I moved back to Detroit after going out on the road, and I wrote my own version of, later on I wrote my own version of, not quite on the road, mine's called Two-Legged Animal, but it's a collection of writing over time, okay? So when I was out in Las Vegas, I invited a friend of mine, hey, next time you're out here, let's go grab a drink or something. What he did instead is he contacted 2 police officers who set me up to get a blowjob. So, and he's from the Trumbull house. And, next time you want me to get a blowjob, you could always get a bird's eye view yourself. Right? You can get a bird's eye view of the worm. And so later on, this turned into the operation that was known as Cash for Smells out in New York. And what ties these two together was the guy from New York. They're standing there arm in arm. It's the police department. He's standing there arm in arm with the Cash for Smells guy on Facebook. It's like, I thought these guys were my friends. I'm sadly mistaken. I'm here to make new friends. I'm going to forget all about my old friends because they were using the Facebook app to destroy my mind. And that's what they did. They wrecked me with it. They think it's funny. Oh, well, you have to live with yourself. So one of the characters, Lionel's drummer, is based on a friend of mine who started playing drums because I started playing guitar. And he later on played in a band with this guy at the Trumbull house. And why he would sick a bunch of cops on me to get my dick sucked, I'll never fucking know. But I'll probably bring it up to him when I see him again. I come from the streets, guys. And I don't come from an Ivy League school. Okay? I was just watching Paul Feig on my favorite show. I only have the limited time to listen to so many podcasts. I listen to Adam Carolla. Why? Because he's a construction guy. He's a working class guy. And he really made it to where it's like you could be a working class guy working here in Hollywood. He's a traditionalist, but he could talk to anybody. It just... it's very strange what's going on right now. And Paul Feig, his parents owned Arc Surplus And if you see my pictures in any of my music videos that I made for the songs that I wrote in the grievance committee and under Linoleum Blownapart, you'll see I'm wearing like 1/3 of my gear comes from ARC surplus. Like I didn't know. So Paul Feig's out here now. He's been working in Hollywood for quite a few years. His new film looks pretty funny. He's a funny guy. So that's what I'm doing. I have all my songs, and in case you don't know, like I was talking about before, this Cash for Smells op turned into them destroying my mind through the Facebook app. I was destroyed for over 2 years. My wife was in on it. The whole idea was to get me to self-harm, and they used accelerated algorithms to do that. Okay? They will forever be bitch crew. That's what you are. Make no mistake about that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Uncivil War. I don't really like this view. But that's okay. I hope you guys are just listening to me, especially the guys I'm talking about back in Michigan. And what I did was just to briefly tell you, we were marginalized from the scene in Detroit. I was the prime mover and songwriter and grievance committee. And these guys have been hazing me ever since. And luckily, I'm not on Facebook anymore, so they can't haze me. You know? And they keep sending these undercover police officers around to, like, stare at you. like, okay, dude. Again, I'm in WeHo, man. Why don't you get on your knees? Phony. So, again, like I said, with the punk rock scene, we were the first inclusive scene. The metal scene, what turned into the metal scene, the metal didn't exist in my time. You have to understand that. And that's what's so great about my property, Linoleum Blown Apart. Because it's about punk rock and it's about inclusivity. That's why I don't understand why these guys are all wrapped up into undercover police officers and selling dope. If that's what undercover police officers do, if you run around and do dope and sell dope and that's what you do, it has fuck all to do with me. I could care less. And that's why I keep moving on, right? I keep pushing forward. So in the 1980s, I was in a punk rock band. I put everything into it, and I did that for a decade. And after a while, it's like, well, where's this going? We were completely marginalized. Anyone who'll tell you anything other than that is a fucking liar. You're a fucking liar. Okay? And so I said, well, hell with it. I went on my first audition. I booked my first audition as an actor. I said, I want to start getting into acting. Why? Because of the VCR, right? So that's another thing here. Can you guys see? I don't know. I can't really draw too good, but we're going to have little rabbit ears. And what? The VCR. The VCR starts coming into play. So, oops, over anything else, right? And so that's what happened for me, and I was able to watch all these films. You know, we had the midnight movies in our house, right? And so I started getting into acting, and I started getting into filmmaking, and at the time, video was just coming out, and video looked like crap. It really did. Nowadays, if you look at 1980s video that you're shot using these little camcorders, it looks kind of cool. It has like a cooler effect to it, but at the time it looked like garbage compared to the sepia tone and the graining of film. Okay? So there's that. And I wanted to make something cool, and at that time, I went through the American Indian Community House in New York City. I moved to New York City. I started getting acting jobs right away. I was working for MTV. I did music videos. I did anything. Anytime they would call me, I would just go. And I did a lot of stuff. And so that's when I was first harassed by undercover police officers. I actually believed for quite a few years that police were actually out there serving and protecting. That's not what they do. Police are there to break your constitutional rights and to put you in jail, number one. Number two, they're there to target an individual. And once you're targeted, once you become this TI, that's it. It's like, it's relentless. For me, it's been going on for 20 years, actually longer than that. That's when that guy sicked those cops on me. A guy who I knew from Detroit, a guy who I contacted and told him what was going on. And he had his little bitch crew, because he'll forever be bitch crew, taking advantage of that. And when I left for New York from Detroit, there was a murder, and I got the bitch son of a newspaper reporter using my likeness in the murder, saying, oh, he looked like a guy who looks like Gordon. And what's the hub of these two guys? The police department, right there. So I was recently listening to TJ Miller. When I mention people, it's not like I'm for them or against them. I'm just using them as an example. So what happened to him is the same thing that happened to me. He was on a train, okay? He evidently pissed some people off because a woman pointed a weapon at him and he started howling at the moon. I call it howling at the moon. That's what happened to me. It gives you Tourette syndrome. My wife was using it, and other people have used it. They used it down underneath the 3rd Avenue Bridge in the Bronx when I was working there and I was married. And they've used it elsewhere. The last place they used it was here in town on Casino and La Cienega when my car broke down. There was like a wolfman looking guy. He pointed it at me and used it, okay? This causes you to have Tourette syndrome. So just like TJ Miller, I went and had a CAT scan. But unlike TJ Miller, they cracked his head open, told him he had a brain aneurysm, right? Because that's what it makes you think that's happening. And I purposely am holding these two people who sicked the cops on me from Michigan personally responsible for this harassment that continues to this very day. All they have to really do is have your phone number, and that's it. And they can continue to come around you and harass you and do all this kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. Because I had to run from over here and come into the library. Can I just relax for a minute? Okay. But I always tie all this stuff in. Because you have to write about your real life. And that's what I'm doing. Some of the characters are based on a combination between characters from Napoleon, characters from my life, things that I've heard over the years. You can check it out for free if you guys are Kindle exclusive. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you could just read it for free. So that's technically the second draft of Linoleum Blownapart, right? And so it's pretty horrific business what these guys are up to. And, I've pretty much had it. I just listened to something last night. Maybe it's affecting me a little bit. This guy went to prison for 30 years for a murder he didn't commit. The guy was connected to, what's the guy's name? He ran for president, Ross Perot. A guy worked for Ross Perot, it was his son. And so they put up this huge award, $30,000, and everybody just got in the rat game. Then once they fixed on this one person who was completely innocent, that was it. All these people got paid out $5,000 and stuff like that for making up stories. And 30 years later, right before the guy got out, when they were working on getting him out of prison because he was innocent, they go to one of the rats. And he's like, yeah, I got my 5,000, whatever. And he goes, yeah, whatever happened to that guy? And they go, he's still in prison. And the guy couldn't believe it. He didn't even know. Obviously, he didn't care. He moved on his life. And let me tell you something. I've moved on my life. That's why I'm out here in California. That's why I'm out here. I'm not out here to be targeted and be harassed. Oh, you could just get his phone number. Once they get your phone number, that's it. And then they can track you and trace you with these fucking corrupt police officers. I don't have anything. I'm indigent. I live in a tiny home at 3rd and Rampart. I'm not hiding anywhere. Anyone who wants to find me can find me. I got this phony sitting next to me on a bus. Oh, God, how pathetic, dude. Just sits next to me on the bus. People coming around staring at me again. It's this whole loop just happening all over again. Okay? And what they want you to do is to make a mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. None of them have anything to do with these people who are harassing. Okay? So what's going on right now is called an uncivil war. We're not going to have a civil war. It's a war of incivility. And you could see this clearly in the media. I had all my notes. All my notes were in such order. I talk a lot about the same things over and over again. I believe that John Lennon smuggled opium on at least one occasion, and he probably traded it in for cocaine. That might be how he got hooked on cocaine. As a matter of fact, it's very well known that he was using heroin, and they talk about it. There's a couple people who can supply first-person evidence of this, and this is Yoko Ono, who's about 90 right now, I heard, and there's a guy named John King. He's right here in Los Angeles. This is the kind of thing that's interesting to me. So you don't come to the show talking about, Paul is dead mythos. That was completely fictitious. That was created to continue an interest in the Beatles and all the people who were making money on the Beatles. Take a look at Eminem. These rap guys, they're using these old rock and roll songs. My glasses are fogging up. I'm getting so... It's pretty hot outside. They're using all these rock and roll songs. Well, that's who's getting paid. They're keeping all that money in the family, quote unquote, in the family. Who else comes from Michigan? I write my own songs. Kid Rock. When I left, all my friends were into punk rock. And when I came back, they were all into Kid Rock. Not sure what happened there. But he hires a comedy writer to write his lyrics. Okay? Jack White, I just heard his new record. Sounds like his last record. The guy's making the same record over and over again. I worked my ass off from the time I was a kid. And when I discovered punk rock, it was life-affirming. And I was like, I can do that. And one of the first songs that I heard was Black Flag. And I considered those guys to be, like in my milieu. I would go see them at the Greystone, right? So listening to this music was just life-affirming. And I started being able to write songs like them. I talk about it in my book, Two-Legged Animal, right? So that's the first part of my life, and I spent 10 years doing that. Then when I left, I went to go visit my sister in New York. That's all I did. And I was just staying there. Like, what was going to bring me back to Detroit? A bunch of marginalizers and a bunch of fucking... I can't understand how men are jealous of other men. I can't understand gatekeeping. I don't understand it at all. I guess because I'm a true independent spirit, and that's what brought me out here. I have plenty of experience as a production assistant. I know exactly what to do and exactly who's who on the set. Okay? So my first job as a production assistant was on a Alanis Morissette video. And it was after the Simon West video came out. I didn't know who she was. And I worked with Stefan Sednui. And I have a Stefan Sednui in my playlist. He made a video with the Black Crowes. Anyways, I could go pretty far afield in that. So I want to talk more about the uncivil war that's happening right now. But it looks like I'm on a trajectory about Linoleum Blownapart here. And so I'd like to talk about that. So my first run-in with these piece of trash cops was when I met the mother of a former girlfriend of mine who went all the way to New York, and then just so happens at the restaurant that we go to, an undercover cop starts pushing me around looking for heroin. I mean, this is just insane. Right? Now, you could say that there's no connection there. They would have to deny it to my face, but I know that there is. Because I asked the same girlfriend if I could use her photo. She pretended like she never got my message. And that was through the Facebook app. That's how these creeps operate. Now they could just come through your phone. Okay? So again, Gangs are fake. Racism is fake, and they need it in order to run these ops. They have to have it. Okay? So if you buy into identity politics, that's your problem, not mine. I am actually out there living it. Okay? I'm actually out there living my life, and I'm being targeted by both sides of the racial divide. Give me a break, dude. You're pathetic. So again, after that, like I said, I went out to Las Vegas, and then I was targeted by these assholes. After that, I came back to Detroit, and I had to quit drinking. Okay? I've been drinking since I was 15 years old. And I wanted to do it in honor of my father, my real father, James Thurman. Now, I can find evidence of my mother's father online. His signature is right online. Okay, his last name's Burnett. I don't have any evidences of my father's father. And so that was going to be the interesting part of a second memoir I was going to write called I, Comma, Son. But after he passed away, I'm getting foggy. After he passed away, his sons remained on the porch of their house, and they played music, they played guitar. My uncle CB was the best mandolin player in Lexington, Kentucky. They were in Flatwoods, and that's why Miley Cyrus's father, Billy Ray Cyrus, he sent my grandmother roses at her funeral, or flowers, I should say. I don't know which kind of he sent. But that's because he would watch my uncles play guitar. And he got inspired and he got into the music business. Okay? His daughter grew up in Nashville. They didn't grow up in Kentucky, but my father did. And I talk about sins of the father and things like that. In order for me to break out of the sins of the father, okay? This is psychological. Now, I just heard this guy talking about, oh man, it was so sad. He's saying that traumas can be passed down, and they can't. Traumas are observed and experienced, and then they manifest themselves in like an OCD behavior, or you start acting out, or you start emulating these traumas, okay? So you can't pass them down through DNA, but there is some things called sins of the father. That's what I call it. And I had to break this sin of the father. One of my first memories is smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. I had to break this habit. I smoked a pack a day, drank a 6-pack a day, and I did everything that I did, which included 2 voiceovers, 3 local commercials, one being played 30 times a day. I did 6 plays. One of them was at the Italian-American Playhouse in the Bronx, where Chaz Palminteri workshopped the Bronx Tale. I had my picture in the paper. Because of who I am and what I look like and how I dressed, I was picked to work for Ralph Lauren's RRL line. And I did all that within 9 years. Okay? So I'm very proud of my work. And I don't need my former family, who I no longer will emotionally invest in, or these fake fucking friends who use cops to harass people. That's what they do. And to think that they're out solving crimes, it's not true. They harass somebody until they can catch you committing a crime. They kind of force you into this life. They'll take everything that you have, put you out on the street. And, that's just the way it is. So anyways, I wrote about this a long time ago. I don't want to write about this kind of stuff now, and I certainly don't. That's why I switched to Linoleum Blownapart. And like I said, part of that is also the Midnight Movies and Napoleon. Now, can you guys pick? You guys know the name of the name of Walter's 7 films? Okay, so he's gonna have 7 films here. Right? They're going to be right here. Beep. 7, Sacred 7, right? And I still don't know what I told them. They're going to be so mad at me. I lost the top already. And here it is. Oh, sorry. There. Right? So we're going to have his 7 films. And I have all these films worked out. I got the narratives fully worked out. Unlike my notes for an Uncivil War. So, excuse me. Part of what I talk about on the show is, my real life, and I don't want to give too much of Linoleum Blownapart away. Okay? The whole point is to what's tying these guys together, the midnight movies, the 7 films, right? And Napoleon himself. But you're only going to see Napoleon in Walter's final film. Oh, there's Walter. I like Walter. Walter's my favorite. Each one of these films could be a film. Today, you have Of Reasonable Service, his first film that comes out, and it's a sleeper because the war is still going on. But when the GIs get released and the war's over, they all go to the theater to see this film. It's serendipity. It happens that way. And that's his first film, and it just becomes huge. It's like From Here to Eternity. And Sullivan's Travels and, Grapes of Wrath, kind of like all wrapped up into one. Plus it has a World War II narrative. Okay? Then he's allowed to make Pork Chops in the Hoosgow. Pork Chops in the Hoosgow, and of course there's going to be jokes because certain ethnic groups, they don't eat pork. Okay? So he gets a bad pork chop. The guy gets a bad pork chop when he's in jail, and that's how he knows that he's going to get killed. And so once he gets this bad pork chop and he looks around and he sees all of these henchmen, they're going to kill him. That's when he knows he has to escape. So it's a boxing film because he's a boxer who gets talked into murder, and it's a prison escape film, and it's all shot in black and white. It's Walter's second film. Okay? Walter's third film is A Spangled Banner. Now, this is when he's already in Hollywood. He's made 2 films, and he starts working with the military-industrial complex basically again, but he doesn't know he's working with them on his first film. Okay? Because he's a wunderkind, here in Hollywood, at the studio he lands at, they also see him as a wunderkind. And they're like, well, we could really use this, and they do. So they allow him to make his little art film, which is Pork Chops in the Hoosgow. It's based on a pulp novel, okay? And then they do the Spangled Banner. And the Spangled Banner tells people, basically like Dr. Strangelove, that the president isn't in charge. They want to drill this into people's minds. The president is just a figurehead, which is interesting right now because that's what's going on right now. It's amazing. I can't even talk about it right now because, right? And so this is what they do, and they show the president of the United States like it's an absurdist comedy, just like Dr. Strangelove. Okay, and they show the president in this absurdist light. And a lot of people get offended by it. A lot of people are troubled by it. It's like 10 minutes to midnight where, the world might blow up with nuclear weapons. Who's really in charge? Then, with the same guy, Jeremy Cloud, he does a film called Not a Sticky Candy Dish. Right? So this is like the Terry Southern film I was talking about in the one episode called Difficult Man. After I just read Difficult Men, my new Bible is called The Warner Brothers. It's by a fella named Yogurt. I write all these notes. I forgot to write his name down. So I'm going to be reading a book about the Warner Brothers. A little bit of Linoleum Blownapart will be based on that. Okay. Don't forget, I think Stanley Kubrick was a Warner Brothers man. Okay. So, and again, what we're doing here with this is we're capturing the essence, right? So with Not a Sticky Candy Dish, he's writing this film with a Terry Southern type / Alan Watts type character, who drinks ayahuasca and goes on mescaline trips and stuff like that, but he's a pseudo-intellectual as well. He basically spills the beans about how his family stole their fortune. And so he gets in a little trouble like that. And so, like, Acosta, he just disappears, right? Who was the guy who was in Hunter S. Thompson's life, right? He just kind of disappears. Like, what happened to the dude, right? And so then they get Walter to make a sci-fi film. So this is going to be his 2001. It's called Scorpius XL. It means Scorpius, XL meaning 40. So XL has a double entendre. It means they're excelling into space. The narrative is very simple. It's kind of complex in the storytelling, but the narrative, the film is coming out in the 60s, so it's going to be like there's a Twilight Zone narrative to it. Like, so there's a Twilight Zone. It's like How to Serve Man. When they give them the book, they're like, How to Serve Man. Oh, you guys are going to serve us? It's like, no, we're going to eat you. It's a cookbook. It's like that, right? To where it's going to be a simple play on words like Scorpius XL. They're excelling into space. Okay. And so it's just some basic science fiction stuff, but they're going to be bringing the brother who was the rocket scientist in of Reasonable Service. That same actor is going to play the same guy. So there's going to be a tie-in to the military-industrial complex, just like there's a tie-in right now with NASA and Pixar, Disney. They both work together. Okay? So, hey, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm black-pilled, so what? There's a lot of people who worship a lot of different gods here. Okay? And that's a person's personal belief system. They shouldn't be vilified because they vote a certain way, because we live in a two-party system. You got to pick one or the other. And it's interesting, like, you can really castigate somebody, like, if they don't. It's almost by elimination. Like, if you don't, right? If you're not for our guy, even though you're not for the competition, we're going to force you into the competition. That's how we're going to look at you, right? So you have to either be with us, right? Because it's an uncivil war. People are being really nasty with each other online. I told you guys before, they used accelerated algorithms on me through the Facebook app, trying to get me to unalive myself. That was the whole plan. And these people think it's funny, and it goes all the way back to Detroit, man. Did I do something to you? Just because I bested you in every single way? Boy, you sure are butthurt. You're acting like a bunch of women, my opinion. So, like a sexual relationship. Sounds bizarre to me. And that's who sick cops on you. It's just truly sad. I'm here to live my life. And what happens is when you're in, I talk about the Metonic cycle, and that's the 19-year cycle. We traced it back here through time. That's the one that Thomas Jefferson, bing, light bulb. Thomas Jefferson talked about the Metonic cycle. Every 19 years, you got to get a new constitution. And we seem to be losing more and more of our rights. January 6th is a bastardization. It's turning it up on its head, right? You have 1-6 instead of 1-9, right? 6 turns out to be 9. I talk about Hendrix in my book too, right? And they said that January 6th is the new 9/11. So what does that mean? They're not going after Arabs in another country. Okay? They're coming after people who aren't going to parrot their same belief system here. That's what's going to happen. And all the weapons that were developed down there, I say down there, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, are going to be used right here. One of the main ones is taking our temperature by pointing a weapon at our head. You can point that weapon here right at our wrist, As a matter of fact, you're not going to get a decent reading because look at me, the sun is bouncing off my head. So when you go to take someone's temperature, it's going to be hotter. It doesn't make any sense. It's psychological. Everything going into the future is psychological. That's why I'm going through with Linoleum Blownapart. I'm just going to keep writing it and putting it online. You will see this get made. We are manifesting this into reality. Okay? So, man, there was a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about dancing. Let's talk about dancing. Now, I was looking into dancing, and these Victorian Baroque dances, they were based on the movements of the stars. Now, a lot of people know that. You know how they have the lines of people standing up and they would go arm in arm and they would spin and they would go into these patterns. These patterns mirror the stars. So they're doing a ritual. So you could cut to, the one that I like is Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. Cut to that video and then look up the banishing pentagram rituals. You have the invocation and you have the banishing. One is coagulation and one is dissolve. One is you're galvanizing yourself and one is you're releasing the toxins, right? They do that in yoga a lot. It's like in with the good air, out with the bad or whatever, right? This is the this is the idea behind it. And when you watch Kate Bush doing this alchemical dance, she's actually doing either a banishing, I don't know the difference between invocation and banishing ritual. Again, one is involution and one is evolution, right? One is coagulation and one is dissolve. And if you ever want to know more about the Bible, I listen to Eliphas Levi, and he knows more about the Bible than most of these preachers out there, right? There's no such thing as the devil. There's no such thing as Satan. They don't exist. Now, what happens is, why do you think they talk about the Holy Ghost? Why do you think you're going to be filled with the Holy Spirit? What's going on there? They want you to be filled with the Holy Spirit of the Christ, right? Well, what do you think happens when someone becomes possessed? Like in the Stanley Kubrick film, The Shining, right? What's happening to him? He is being possessed, right? There's an element of reincarnation there as well. He is possessed, right? And that's the same thing that you get in church, but they want you possessed by the Holy Spirit. Why? Why? Are you? I think most people's interpretations are way off. I think if you go to these lousy preachers and some of these people, they don't even know what the hell they're even talking about. It's very bizarre to me. But again, churches, temples, and mosques is about your community. I'm here in Hollywood, California to work. I'm not here to be indigent. I'm not here to be targeted. I'm here to work and live the last third of my life as creatively as possible. And if that takes me eating out of the garbage can and going standing in a food line, then I'm doing it. I'm willing to do that. And that's why I want to let people know from the Trumbull House, people from whose mommy writes for the paper in Royal Oak using my likeness in the murder of Ron Beauty, you motherfucker. It's on, sissy. Guys, I'm just figuring all this stuff out now. You're watching this show in real time. You can get involved in this show. We're talking about Walter's films. I'm trying to wrap it up here. Trying to do as short a film as I can. I know they're spastic. Thank you for sticking with me. I want you to be scared. I want you to have the street element. I want you to know that where I come from, 1980s Detroit. Make no mistake about that. Right? I come from the same place as Eminem and Jack White. I was doing what they were doing long before they were doing it. So Walter makes Scorpius XL, and it's more 2001 than 2001, and that's why Stanley Kubrick's 2001, he makes it so spectacular because he has to compete with Walter. This is a Forrest Gump style universe where these characters take place in our world. Do you understand that? That's the most powerful thing about it. Please read scene by scene, the Linoleum Blownapart that I just put up. It's got my ugly mug on the cover. Okay? Max, I love that character. He's a guy like me. His dad's a gangster. That's all I could say. The name is based on Max Rose. I can't even say it now. Rose Pierre. Damn. I'm so filled with malapropisms. I'm surprised I can even pronounce that. So, okay. So we're at Walter's 1963 film, Scorpius XL. Then what does he do after that? He does a horror film. And he does a horror film called A Clear Dust Jacket. And again, we're talking about possession. That's why I'm talking about this stuff. Because I have to research this stuff. So what's going to happen on Kindle is I'm going to put up each treatment for each of Walter's films. I only write treatments, guys. I only put a sparse little bit of dialogue. So when this thing is up and running, and it will be, you'll see it get made. It'll be a limited series. You have to have stuff for the hired people to do. Am I going to sit here and write all the dialogue? If I was just going to write all the dialogue, then I'd go make it like Quentin Tarantino made Reservoir Dogs, which was genius. And by the way, the show Reservation Dogs should have been called Res Dogs. It sounds better. That's what a woman said to me at the American Indian Community House when I had my Reservoir Dogs shirt on. That's why they called the show Reservoir Dogs. Is it called Reservoir? It should have been called Res Dogs. Right? Reservation Dogs. I'm sorry, not Reservoir. You see, she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, Res Dogs, those are engines." Right? And because I'm like Midwest and East Coast, she was talking about West Coast. And that's what the show's about, Reservation Dogs, it's called. It should have been called Res Dogs, REZDOGS, or Z. Right? One of the bands in my property, Linoleum Blownapart, is called Heretical Sons. And they got their name off the Scorpius XL film. Right? I'm going to do an episode about each film, right? So, and then that brings us, he does the scary movie called A Clear Dust Jacket. There's going to be a cult. And I meant to say that they venerate John, the writer of the book of Revelation, and they use the eisegesis, not the exegesis. They put themselves into the Bible, as a lot of people did, and that's how they ran that Manson op. Okay? It was the same thing. They just use that same narrative over and over and over again. It's pretty boring to me, a guy like me, right? And that brings us to his last film, Bonaparte, Bon Ami, where he does a film about Napoleon, but it's told from a friend of Napoleon. Because why? We know what happens in Napoleon. We all do. He starts off at military school. He works his way up. He falls in love with Josephine. He does all these campaigns. He crowns himself emperor. And at that moment is going to be the end of Bonaparte, Bon Ami, the film that I'm writing within the film. Right? Because that's the moment where he goes against, it's about his friend. It's not about him, right? It's about his friend. And his friend looks at him, and his friend emulates him, right? So it starts off at the supper where he meets the merchants, the four merchants, and the friend is in there drinking in the same bar. And so they begin passing around the champagne, and the friend is like, His glass is empty, so he sticks his glass underneath and he gets some champagne in his glass. He gets a free drink. And that's when he becomes enamored with Napoleon. Okay, so that's the film. That's Walter's final film that he makes. Okay, so that's the 7 films of Walter. And these are, this is what Lionel has in common. And so when you go into, right, so you have to go back and forth for the story. So Lionel is a story about a punk rock kid, but it could be Duff McKagan, who is in a band called The Farts, and then he becomes in the biggest band in the world, Guns N' Roses. It could be about Kurt Cobain, who became one of the biggest bands in the world, right? It could have been me in my band. My songs were superior. They still stand up. I don't care what anybody says. And, that's part of why I'm here. But what's going to connect the two, right? You have to be able to vacillate. So when you get a lull in the storyline of Lionel, right, they're only going to show so much. Then we go into whatever they're watching. In the last one that I put up, the last treatment I put up on Kindle, he goes right up to Bonaparte Bon Ami. Right? So when they start talking about it, then we're going to cut to it. Right? And so then that's going to lead out of that into what? Walter's life. And that's how you go between the lives of these two characters. It's through the film. What we don't want to ever see is Walter making the film. We don't ever want to see Lionel writing the song. So corny. What we want to do is we want to come right back to Lionel with a new song. Don't forget, he might be the reincarnation of Napoleon. Okay? So, I'm not here to participate in an uncivil war. Okay, I'll do better next time. I swear to God, I always write these things down. I get a lot of stuff throughout the week, and I want to tell you guys about it a little bit. They're going to be coming out with credit cards without any numbers. We talk about that. The mRNA shot is biotechnology. If it's tech, that means it's electronic. Okay, so again, I'm here for my creativity. I'm not here to participate in an uncivil war. And that's all the YouTube channels that are getting all the hits and all the clicks. There is no alt media. Alt media is truly alternative. What they're doing is they're feeding both sides. So if you're not woke, then you're alt-white, right? They always have to include race. The people on the woke side, I was actually, when I first came to town, I was talking about men boxing women. I was talking about that, and look, it came to pass. And the people who are pro whatever that is, their only argument is that the guy's a biological anomaly, and that the right are too dumb to understand how DNA works. That's their argument. This is what I come to understand. I'm involved in debates online. You can't just call people dumb. That's not part of the debate. That's not winning the debate. But when you're in an uncivil war, it has that appearance, right? When you put down the other side, you call them stupid, you call them dumb, they're not able to get it. What they're not talking about is very simple, guys. Genitalia. Oh boy. Right? They purposely leave that out. They talk about gender, but they won't talk about genitalia. And they're making it about somebody's DNA and how they can go ahead and have these chromosomes and all this kind of talk. It's all this pedantic talk. But You got to really strip it down to what we're actually talking about. Oh, that's a double one. Okay, so I talk about friendships, I talk about family ships, I talk about heartbreak, because that's all going into my project. I want to make sure that these people understand, these piece of shit rats targeting me, man. Why don't you go fuck off somewhere? Go find something else to do. I mean, it's really, truly sad, man. And come to find out, it was guys that I knew. Hey, man, you know, you could have worked with me. We could have put out records together and done all that. Part of the reason I left was because I wasn't getting any help. There was no cooperation. There was no Third Man Records. There was nobody helping you out or doing anything for you. I can't do everything on my own, and I can't do everything on my own here either. So please, contact me, leave a comment, let me know that you're watching my show. I leave comments on people's shows all the time. Boy, they couldn't say shit if they had a mouthful of it, huh? And I don't appreciate it. I've been online for a really long time. My name's Gordon Douglas Ison. Step to me anytime, anywhere.